Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. We are back with another Neurodiversity Stories, and I'm your host. My name is Darren Clark, and I am here every single Friday, without fail, to share more awareness around neurodiversity and also share other people's story around neurodiversity. Guys, we've had a phenomenal amount of guests that have asked to be on this show, so I'm absolutely blown away. We have a huge list of people that are waiting to come on, and we've had an incredible amount of fantastic guests that have been on this show as well. And we have another phenomenal guest. He's a real great friend of mine with Kieren, Windsor, and he's going to be sharing his take really and his experience on the educational system, and also as well as his experience of his son with the ADHD. So I'm going to be welcoming Kieren very, very shortly. But why are we here and why do I do this? As I mentioned before, I'm a global neurodiversity consultant, and my objective really is to spread more awareness around neurodiversity, to hear people's story, and ultimately to have you guys share your stories as well. So guys, if you are tuning in live, just let us know again where you're tuning in from. I'm just again amazed how far this stretches out to Kenya. We had Malawi, we had Australia, over in America as well. So please feel free to pop who you are and where you're tuning in from in the comments. It's always great to hear. And also feel free to connect with anyone else that's obviously put in the comments as well. So guys, like I said, we're going to have another fantastic show today. This again, obviously, I would like to give a big shout out to our sponsor, Scanning Pens, and please check this out. So guys, Scanning Pens are sponsoring our show, and their story is very, very simple. They were created to empower people, to help them with assistive technology around dyslexia. They are a global organization, and they help the educational system and the organization system. So please do check out Scanning Pens. So guys, without further ado, I'm going to be bringing on my guest. I normally say next guest. But this is, like I said, it's a really great friend of mine, Kieren. You're going to absolutely love this guy in the sense of what value he brings. But Kieren, like you said, is a business coach and advisor. I've known him for a very, very long time. Great friend, and it'd be great to get his views on neurodiversity and how that works for him and his family as well. So guys, sit back and I'll introduce you to Kieren. Good morning, Kieren. How are you doing, my friend?
Morning. I am very well, mate. Very well indeed. Lovely to be here. Thanks for the build-up.
I was going to do it for about another 8 to 10 hours, but I thought I'd just leave it as a couple of minutes.
I was going to, yeah, a 5-page bio. Just read through it.
Kieren, I only really kind of briefly kind of mentioned. Although you don't work primarily in the the neurodiversity kind of sector, so to speak, I mean, I'm sure with people that you kind of mentor and kind of work with, I'm sure there's an element of crossing paths. But it would be really great to kind of just for you to kind of introduce yourself and just kind of tell people a little bit about you and what you do, and then we can kind of go into the other parts as well. So please feel free to let people know who you are.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, my name's Kieren, and I currently work as a coach consultant with a company called Business Builder, and I work with predominantly professionals and other service providers to help them grow their businesses. And that's really about sort of finding clarity about their position and focus on the future and confidence to go and deliver that. So, for me, it's very much about the personalities and motivations and aspirations of individuals. And that's really always fascinated me is the people that we come into contact with every day. And of course, the nuances that we all have, which makes it such a beautiful place to be.
Absolutely. And I guess, with regards to, I mean, when we say you don't work in the kind of neurodiverse kind of sector, I mean, I think, you know, we all collectively kind of work in that sector, you know, realistically, because, you know, working with people, working with one client one day could be different to, you know, the different needs and stuff could be on the other aspects as well. The reason I brought you on here, Kieren, is just to kind of get your view on the kind of your experiences with neurodiversity and kind of and we're kind of, it'd be great to kind of talk about that and, you know, the educational system and how it's kind of structured and you know, moved from experiences. So you have is it a son and a nephew with ADHD? Yeah. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So my nephew's in his 20s now, and I'd say struggled with ADHD, or it was diagnosed quite a long time ago. And my youngest son also has ADHD, so there are some similarities between them. Yeah, he's been diagnosed for about 3 or 4 years now. Okay,
so in the grand scheme of things, it's kind of it. I mean, I look at my diagnosis as kind of, you know, very late in the sense of, you know, 36, 37. But even that, you know, you're talking 3 or 4 years ago, it's still quite a late diagnosis.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something we've talked about, isn't it? That, you know, actually, I think that the amount of information that's available to us about ADHD is great now. And for adults finding out in late diagnosis there's something that they can sort of attribute certain behaviors to or experiences to, means that they've got somewhere to look for information, and then they can recognize themselves hopefully within that research and see how they might be able to apply those learnings to moving forwards. So you have a much clearer understanding. And I think with children, of course, they don't have the luxury of really wanting to or access to the same research. Certainly as parents, none of us get the sort of the parental handbook when the baby's handed to you. No. And it certainly doesn't have a big section in it saying, and by the way, look out for this just in case they're diagnosed as ADHD in 10 years time. So it is a big challenge. And you mentioned the education system. Of course, so many people involved with children all of the time, but teachers, you know, are not necessarily equipped to deal with this sort of thing either. And the system as it is probably not very well equipped. So it's just a big challenge for everyone, really. Your point about late diagnosis, I think, is absolutely right. Even though James was starting to go through the process of diagnosis around 10, it wasn't until he was 11 that he was diagnosed, and I still think that was quite late.
And with regards to that, I mean, what was the kind of, can you remember kind of the process? You know, was it a long process in the sense of the diagnosis, and did you always kind of feel like there was something that you needed kind of support with? You know, what was that kind of like from a parent point of view, if you don't mind me?
Yeah, I do. That's a really great point, because, you know, it isn't 2020 hindsight is always a wonderful thing to apply to anything. But, you know, we certainly recognised that there were, he was slightly different. He's the youngest of 3, and so some of his behaviours were slightly different than our previous experiences. But, you know, we're not really equipped to know exactly what that's attributable to at the time. But yeah, certainly for us, we had he was in his last year of junior school, so he's I think 10 at the time, and we got called in to speak to the SEN, who very frankly and honestly said that she was going to see another child in the same class. Okay. And very quickly saw what James's behaviours, and sort of not ignored the other kid, but saw that James was someone of interest and flagged it up for us, and we're ever be grateful for her for doing that. And I think it was over a year, well over a year actually, before an official diagnosis was made, by which time he was into secondary school and coming towards the sort of end of the middle end of his first year there. Yeah. Which of course is a big change for everyone.
Absolutely. So it was in kind of, we say in the UK, kind of primary school. So it was in kind of the kind of the last year, I guess, in primary school that it was kind of picked up. And do you find, you know, because I remember primary school as in, you know, kind of I really enjoyed primary school. I mean, I just think of it as like stickle bricks and colouring in and just having fun. You know, I don't think I'm showing my age when I say stickle bricks. But you know, kind of that element. And I guess towards the end of you know, the primary school, then it starts kind of preparing you for big school, so to speak. And then it's kind of you know, then the tests start getting in, and then it's kind of where are you going to sit when you go to that secondary school. So do you think it was kind of picked up around sort of that time when he was being kind of assessed more?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. That, you know, certainly for the education system in this country, we test our kids pretty much like all the way through, but against different measures. But it starts to get a bit more serious towards the end of junior school, around 9, 10, 11, doesn't it? When going into senior school, which is then pretty much building them up for their first tier of exams when they're 15, 16. And of course, the significant difference is that they go from being sort of top of the hill, if you like, as being the biggest kids in the school, in quite a big school, actually. And everyone's younger than them, to flipping that into being very much the youngest, their pre sort of growth spurt and their pre-maturity, and being around kids that are 15, 16, and certainly around here, the school that James originally went to has got sixth form as well. So, you know, quite a daunting situation for anyone at that age.
But it's, I mean, you know, you kind of remember, you know, roughly kind of what school was like, you know, and then obviously then you relive it through your children's eyes. But it is, I mean, it's such that step from, you know, primary school, so kind of your first school to your second school, you don't realize how much of a pressure that is. I mean, it's not just educational side, it's, you know, peer pressure, there's so many elements that are kind of, you know, that you need that confidence for. And I guess, if you then, as soon as you hit that kind of big school, so to speak, your secondary education, you are then kind of tested in the sense of, you know, what class you sit in, whether you're, and then obviously that isolation away from your friends that you say, you know, that you went with your primary school into your secondary school. There's so many moving parts, you know, for a child to have that. And then you put the kind of the neurodiverse element to it as well. It can be incredibly overwhelming.
Definitely. You know, you're going from a school year of, I don't know, 50 children to a school year of 250, 300 kids, plus the age differences and the expectation differences. And outside just the testing, there's also the judgment that comes with that. And they're being judged by their peers every day, being judged by their seniors every day. You know, everyone judges each other. It's a natural trait, although, you know, it'd be nice if we didn't, but we do. And of course, the people that believe that we're being judged the most is ourselves. You know, even if other people aren't judging us, we think we're being judged. So it's a really pivotal time. And one of the things that's clear to me is that, you know, none of us really like change. I think it's rare for me to come across people who really embrace big change, and it's something you talk about with clients quite a lot. But certainly with in ADHD, I've recognised that change is really very disruptive and unsettling.
Yeah, I would definitely say that. And again, you know, I guess we you know, maybe it's a case of, I was having this conversation with someone the other day, and they were saying about change, and they were saying that when it's, you know, we get up, we change our clothes, and we change this, or we change our cars, and it's almost there's certain things that you know, we continuously change every single day. There's something I change. Even if our cells and our bodies change, you know, we haven't got the same cells we had, you know, years ago. But I guess it's those elements that really kind of you know, make you feel really uncomfortable with those change. And I mean, really interesting to know whether it's because it's changed us out of our control, or it makes us uncomfortable. I mean, you know, the science behind it, you know, the psychology behind it would be really interesting to know. But like you said, the change element is, you know, when you've got a child at that kind of young age, implementing those changes can be really kind of, it can go one or two ways, can't it?
Yeah, definitely. And it's foundational change, isn't it, rather than superficial change, I guess. That but you know, one of the things that comes that that I've seen that came with ADHD, certainly for my son, was that sort of the enjoying routine. And there's some comfort there in seeing the same things happening every day and doing things in the same way, and it can become a little bit obsessive. But when you throw change at that, then it's even more destabilizing than it might be for someone else who's not got the same diagnosis. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And, I'm kind of, still, speaking to, yourselves, parents with children with ADHD and, people with ADHD. I'm learning more. Like I said, I was diagnosed at 36, 37 with ADHD and dyslexia. So I'm really kind of still honing in, because all those years prior to that, I'm kind of thinking, well, that's just the norm. That's just how I deal with these, these situations like sensory overload, when I feel, I'm surrounded. I love going to events. When we can, and having all the kind of hustle and the bustle and the noise. But then I kind of get this sensory overload where I then need to kind of move to a quiet place, put some headphones in, and kind of, just real kind of rebalance. And I guess, the school environment, can be very loud. It can be, ongoing. There's not a lot of space to be able to have those kind of quiet times.
That's right
for a student.
I think that's a really good point. There's kind of no respite from it, and being in that school environment with so many other people around, there are huge distractions which are easily followed, and the academic system is not necessarily of interest. But certainly just the ability to sort of sit still in a classroom with 30 other kids. It's hard enough for teachers as it is to have 30 kids in a room and keep everybody's attention, let alone if you've got people with attention deficit by definition is, and of course you're trying to manage that. It's not just the impact on that child with the diagnosis, it's the impact on the other kids that become affected by the distraction of someone who is literally unable to sit still for that amount of time.
Because we think, sorry, please go on.
I was just going to say that the unfortunately the way that gets dealt with is we need to sit still and be quiet. Well, that sitting still and be quiet is pretty tricky for kids with ADHD. And then there seems to be a really robust disciplinary process in our education system. So it scales quite quickly, and there are quite detailed steps. So you get told off, put on the board, you get 1, 2, 3 marks, and then by the time you get to 3 marks, you get taken from a class, put in isolation. Just the word isolation fills me with heebie-jeebies. Let alone you've got someone who struggles to sit still and be quiet, taken out of an environment where there are at least other people, put into an environment where there are very few people, and expected to stay quiet and stay still because it's essentially a punishment. It's just, where's that naturally going to end up? Well, I can tell you where it ends up. It ends up in them pushing back, and in their pushing back, the only natural way for the school to deal with it is to continue to follow the disciplinary process. And we know where that ends up, and it ends up with kids not being in school.
Absolutely. And if you think about that element, we touched on the isolation part, which can be really devastating, because most people going through secondary school kind of just want to keep their head kind of down and just kind of get through kind of the educational side of it, because there is so much peer pressure and there's so much going on, and the minute you're kind of singled out as someone who's naughty or is or not able to sit at a certain table, or go into a certain classroom and learn certain languages and stuff, it just builds up and up and up and up, and that element of anxiety and stress for someone going into school can be devastating. If you think about ADHD, for instance, I tend to as adults we can kind of decide kind of whether we want to work for someone or work for ourselves, or what job we want to do and what we like doing, what we don't like doing. There's an abundance of choice. Don't get me wrong. There's things that we need to do. We're adults at the end of the day. Okay. But for a child, you think about going into the school. Yes, they can kind of, when they go up the ranks of the educational system, they can kind of choose subjects which interest them more. But generally, you think about now, if someone said to you, Kieren, we're now going to sit you in this room for an hour and we're just going to basically talk to you about something that you have no relevance or no interest into whatsoever, you start thinking, how's this, how does this affect me? You take that from a student point of view, and then you put ADHD on top, it can be, really tough for that individual.
Yeah, I think we've all been in meetings like that. But you're dead right. I was thinking about this last night, actually. That we've got so much opportunity as adults that, an adult who learns that they're ADHD, yourself included, you can read about it, you can learn what the impact is. You could then potentially choose careers that are going to better reflect some of the challenges and opportunities you have as someone with ADHD, or at least go into it eyes wide open. And you're dead right. If I don't like sitting behind a desk, I'm going to go and work in a trade. And if I don't like working in a trade, I might go into hospitality. And they're all completely significantly different worlds in which everyone ought to be able to find an environment in which they can flourish and enjoy and find some fulfillment from their careers. And I would argue if you don't feel that, then you might be in the wrong one. For kids that are going through quite an antiquated, archaic education system, where's their choice? Okay, well, you get to choose between sort of geography or history. Well, as a binary choice, especially for someone with ADHD, that's not much of a choice. And so you're dead right. They can't choose to go to a different school that teaches in a different way, or choose to go through a different curriculum or whatever. And I know that there are certain changes that have been made, but James is at a school that's supposed to do sort of there's some manual workshop type classes, and unfortunately with the pandemic, no one's been able to do any of those. So actually one of the reasons for him wanting to go to this school is to get a bit more hands-on and break up the sort of classroom work, and it hasn't even been able to do that. But that limited choice is really debilitating, I think.
Absolutely. But it's even down to, if you think about working habits. Now, I know you have a, if you don't mind me sharing, you have a stand-up desk, don't you?
I do. It wobbles when I move it.
So do you know what? Even those elements, a stand-up desk, it gives you that, that way of going, do you know what? One, it kind of helps with, the fitness and the mental, keep your, the stimulation and making sure that you kind of, are able to kind of work more productive. So there's a real science behind it, element of doing it. And whenever I'm working, I tend to put my headphones in and I'm listening to classical music, just the music, no words, just the music, because that enables me to zone out and kind of get into the groove. Brilliant. So we find our own ways of working. But if for instance, there are some amazing schools out there that are doing some fantastic stuff and they're helping understanding this element, but isn't it like the two of us are finding our ways to be able to do our jobs, in a certain way? Stand-up desk, there's, other loads of stuff that we do is work. We do, if you think about work as such, the workplaces you work with and the organizations you work with, they talk about wellness, and having a wellness space in their office, and meditation, and, working for short amounts of time, and then, breaking, and then resting, and then coming back. Do you see what I mean? There's so many, if you think from a work point of view, there's so much variety that we can do now to help the employer, employment side of it. But it's the school system can, like you say, can feel a little bit archaic in the way that we structured. We're sat down, you're at a desk, you come in at a certain time, you perform, and then you're graded, and then so on. Just my thought on it. Yeah,
I completely agree. And I think, again, pandemic has highlighted this, hasn't it, with flexible working, and we're working remotely and other things. Actually, because of the extended amount of time that it's been in place, we're seeing that, it doesn't suit everybody to be forced to work from home when not to go into the office, much as it probably doesn't suit everybody to be forced to work in an office if that doesn't suit them. But having what we are faced with is the potential future of having a flexible working space, and I think hybrid is the sort of cliche word at the moment, where you can find a balance that suits you, suits the business, suits the employees, and suits your team structure and that sort of thing. And we'll work that balance out over the next couple of years. But if you can have that environment in a working space that's commercially led in the private sector, and people are trying to make profit, and they can, and those businesses can understand the opportunities and benefits that flexible working offers their employees, and the increases in productivity, let's not forget that they see as a result of having happy, content, and well looked after employees. There's absolutely no reason that can't be adopted into the school system to help all kids. Forget whether they've got ADHD or not. It's just provide them with a learning environment in which they can best do what the outcome driver is for the education system, which is to educate them.
Absolutely.
But just trying to force people into this really narrowing view of what normal looks like, and only having a system that conforms to that, just doesn't seem to be a very healthy way to bring our kids through. And let's face it, they will inevitably spend a large portion of their adulthood coming to terms with that experience. And overcoming it, in which is one of the most upsetting things. Is I want, as we all do, want our kids to be happy.
Absolutely.
But it almost feels a bit tortuous forcing him to go into a place that just doesn't have the facilities or the ability to be flexible enough to support him. And allow him a happy environment to do some successful learning, which I've no doubt he would. Bright kid.
Absolutely. I'm just gonna bring up a couple of comments on here. We've got Catherine says school system is currently discriminatory, needs review. Apologies.
Yeah, absolutely.
There we go. Thank you so much for sharing that. I just want to bring up Kerry Leo.
Dead on, by the way.
What was that? Sorry.
I think that's absolutely dead on. I think it does discriminate. And just to highlight that point, Catherine, I know we can't talk to each other, but actually, one of the examples I've used with the school is if you had a child who had a nervous tic, and he or she is sitting in a class, and that tic is disrupting the class, and you would a teacher, with all reasonableness, ask them to stop doing it? I just don't think they would or could. I think that would be discriminatory. So why is it that for kids with ADHD or other challenges and other diagnoses, why should we expect them to behave the way that we, in that conformed way, and not allow for them to be their own person? And why can we not make allowances for them? I just don't see it. I think it is discriminatory. Yeah.
Absolutely spot on. I'll just bring up Kerry Leo said schools should help students learn how they learn best as part of the process of educating the whole child. How do we learn that works best for us, like music or stand-up desks, as we mentioned? Imagine if we help children learn that earlier about themselves. Kerry, absolutely spot on. And I know, Kieren and myself touched on the elements of the stand-up desk, the time out, the meditation, all these different elements. And I don't think it's purely, if you think, I think one of the hardest jobs out there, amongst the hardest jobs out there is being a teacher. It's an incredibly difficult job to do, incredibly rewarding. And I just got so much empathy for the job and the role that they have to do. But again, obviously, they're in a system that is kind of taught to them to actually, teach in a certain way. And there are, like I said, there are some incredible things that they do within the schools, especially, the dyslexia schools that I've been kind of working with, the, incredible kind of innovative ways of working. But like you said, Kieren, it does need to be something that is not just for dyslexics and neurodiverse, but for as a whole, to kind of just understand the whole kind of educational side of it of how we work.
I completely agree. And, the teachers that I've dealt with in the main have been incredibly supportive. They're always looking to try and bend the system, push the boundaries of the system in whatever way they possibly can to help James. And there's never been a question that James is best interests have been at the heart of what they're trying to do. I think they're working in a defunct system that doesn't allow them to do anything of any even common sense that they know would help. And they're limited by finance, they're limited by the tools that they have, by the numbers of people that they have in support for them. It's really, I mean, it's like giving someone, I don't know, kind of a hammer and nail and telling them to go and build a house with it. It's just, it's just not possible. But if you want to hammer a nail into a wall, it's perfect. But anything other than that, it doesn't work. And the biggest thing for me, Darren, is that within all of this is the psychological impact on the kids that are coming through the system. And forget their education. We just surely want our kids to come out of education being happy and rounded people who understand values and want to go and enjoy their lives and embrace it. And whether you've got 9 GCSEs or none, people prove this all the time, that education doesn't prevent success. And actually, if they were educated in a more holistic way, that might encourage or embrace them the opportunity to have more success. But the psychological impact is, I think, massive. That, like I said, I used the word tortuous earlier on. If you're putting someone into an environment that they don't enjoy, that they can't possibly flourish in, and no one else around them can help, there's only going to be a negative experience there. And if that's consistent and repeated over and over and over again, what do we expect the outcome to be? Well, I know that the outcome is poor mental health. It just is. It's a traumatic experience.
I mean, if we think about the educational system, and for me, as you know, the educational system, I kind of left without any qualifications, and then you're then thrown into the real world, I so to speak, the working place. And it wasn't until kind of a couple of years, about 6-7 years ago, I started working with the educational system, within the schools. And then I started thinking to myself, like, how many people at that time, same time of the year, across the entire country, all leave that school, and then they all go into the kind of the workplace. And then it's a case of, then it's kind of like, it's trying to work out where you fit, whether it's an apprenticeship, whether it's, you go straight into a job, whether it's further education. And, leaving school with, no qualifications or very little qualifications, but more importantly, that low self-esteem or the confidence element can be really detrimental, because you then got the element of trying to apply for a position and leaving out, not being able to get those qualifications that you had, or even then going into the workplace and then thinking to yourself, well, the workplace is just going to be as tough as the school. Am I going to get some support in there? So it's a real kind of progressive journey, and if that self-esteem is not played a part in it, can really affect an individual, can't it? Yeah,
definitely, and we see that. I see that all the time, really, in my son's approach, which is, they don't care about me, they don't do anything to help me. It's the same every time. We just get treated the same way every time. So the school expects him to behave in a certain way and can't do anything about it, which then creates this kind of vicious circle. He then expects them to behave in a certain way, and that creates a vicious circle. And then they don't expect him to be able to behave, and he doesn't expect them to listen to him. And then so even at the first second of them coming together, well, what's going to happen? All their expectations get fulfilled. And you say, I told you so. I knew exactly what was going to happen. And you're like, well, okay, but it's predictable. So someone needs to make a change. And I've talked about this for years with the school, is actually, if we expect our kids to be self-aware enough to make a change or to stop behaving in a certain way, if we're in this vicious loop, if we expect them to stop that, step out of it and do something different to change their futures, you're on a hiding to nothing, because I just don't see them having the tools to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So it can only be done by the people around them, for them to put a stop on it, to assess what's going on and try something, do something different to try and change the outcome. And that unfortunately then does transcend through teachers and senior leadership teams in schools and into the system and into local government and central government to, they're going to create the vicious circle, and they're just fulfilling it all the time. They need to step out of it and make a change.
I couldn't agree more. I'm just going to show. So, Catherine, again, Kieren, I know you were kind of talking to Catherine with what you said. So, absolutely, schools. Catherine then said, absolutely, schools should be understanding all ways of thinking. I'm just going to share as well. Jonathan McDonald, he said, remember that the neurological process of having to continually problem solve is like a muscle. Neurodivergence, once free of the negative labeling, are superior in all manner of cognitive tasks. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jonathan. And then we don't have your name, but we will use your comment. This is the compound effect / deaths by thousands of cuts of failures and rejections. We have to keep fighting for our children, and this type of work / education is great. Thank you. I'm not too sure who this was because we don't have your name on there, but thank you so much for
that's great. That's a phrase I've used. I mean, Jonathan's point's absolutely spot on as well. I think there are such strengths in being able to do that problem solving over and over and over again. It's right that you build the strength, and if you can just take away this sort of negative image from in front of someone and they can see what the real world opportunities are like, then they're really well prepared to deal with it, because they're overcoming challenge every day. Not all of us. Certainly I'm not diagnosed with any condition, and so therefore I'm quite fortunate. I'm not faced with this challenge to wake up and deal with every single day and in an environment that doesn't conform to my way of thinking. And so for those people that are going through that every day, they are building up muscles that, if they're pointed in the right direction, would be phenomenal. And the other, the anonymous one,
it's not anonymous. It's Deborah Wilson.
Hello, Deborah Wilson.
It's Deborah was the one who mentioned the comment about the cuts and stuff. Thank you for sharing that, Deborah. Sorry,
Deborah. I've used that phrase a lot of times when I'm talking to the school. That it is potentially makes sound extreme, but I think actually it could be practical as well. Is death by 1,000 cuts? It's not getting the mark up on the board that's the problem. It's not the first isolation. It's not the first detention. It's not the first temporary exclusion. It's that consistent, repeated over and over and over again every single day. The expectation of that, the anxiety of having to face that. There's nowhere that you can't get away from it, because if they don't go to school, they're told to get into school, which is where we are at the moment. And so, what do you do? Take them out, and where's the support for, home tutoring and things? It just doesn't seem to be any other option. But absolutely, that it's the incremental accumulation of every little challenge over and over and over again. It just eventually the bucket's full up, and you haven't got capacity to take any more. Frankly,
absolutely. I want to share a friend of mine. Jack Boyle said the education system is designed to produce academics and are judged on this. Now, I understand this, and it'd be great to get your views on this, Kieren. I think, with the educational system that we definitely need, and I know we spoke about this before, we definitely need people with, the degrees and all these, the educational side of it. We need thinkers. We need, the world is made up in a diverse way where we all bring huge amounts of value into it. And I guess what Jack's mentioning there with regards to it's the education system set up to, to go out and get your kind of degrees and then go into the workplace. What's your thoughts on this, Kieren? I'm putting you in the hot seat there.
Right and varied. I guess I sort of agree with Jack's. Was it Jack?
Yeah, Jack. Jack Boyle.
Yeah, I'm not sure that they're necessarily producing academics, but I think they're certainly throwing out people who are academically inclined or respond well and can learn well in an academic environment. That's for sure. So yeah, I agree with what Jack's saying, really. But the world's a wonderfully diverse place, made up of wonderfully diverse people, and it would be pretty bloody boring, frankly, if we were all the same, right? So this kind of narrow view approach of you can only having to stay in higher education. And then there's a really high percentage of people going to university because, 10, 12 years ago, it was any degree is a good degree. And actually you're going to need a degree to get a job because jobs were harder to come by. And now you see a sort of decline, I guess, in people going to university because actually there's such good apprenticeship systems out there. I mean, the working world is showing flexibility in how it embraces people coming from education and into the working world and how they can learn more and train in specific areas, not just in professional vocations, which historically used to be where you go for your degree for. But yeah, I just think it is a cookie cutter mentality. And we're just a bit bigger and a bit better than that, aren't we? As a human race, it's recognize we're not all the same. It's just like so naive.
Do you think so then that brings me on to the last point I want to cover on that element is if we have a school system, an education system where we're working to get the qualifications that the student needs to then go out to the workplace. If you think about the workplace in its entirety, the process of the application process that someone would have to go through, there's still that element of being able to, if you think about, I would, when I kind of worked in retail, I kind of got as high as I could get. And then I was actively told that I couldn't go any further, even though I got to quite a very senior level, I couldn't go any further because I didn't have the qualifications that if I was applying for that role, you would need, despite the fact of the 10, 11 years and hundreds of stores and hundreds of staff and millions of pounds that you made for that one statement of you needed a degree or something in that to get that position. There's still this element within the workplace, isn't there? Of the application.
Utter nonsense, isn't it? I mean, it's just there are a lot of words that spring to mind to describe that, Darren, none of which I'm going to say on LinkedIn. It's just nonsense, isn't it? It's each on everyone's abilities. When I talk to clients now about not recruiting for skills, but not recruiting for sort of qualifications and things, but recruiting on values and personality and soft skills. And of course, we just know that we spend all of our lives building soft skills, and sometimes we employ coaches to help us with that, and trainers to help us with that. Mentors are always around us. We're learning this stuff all the time, and actually, there doesn't seem to be an environment where that is recognised as something of value for kids leaving. Now, of course, they do learn that through families and their friendship interactions and that sort of thing. But I think it's easy to ignore the negative impact of the education system. If I said to you, "Are you happy?" and you said, "No, not really." If you're not happy at work, it would be naive of me to think that you not being happy at work couldn't infiltrate your home life and affect your friendships and your family life, right? Absolutely. So if you're unhappy at school, of course, it's going to affect your family life and your friendship groups and how you behave, because it's a really significant part of your life.
Hugely.
All of these expectations and pressures on you to achieve, to behave in a certain way.
Absolutely.
So, I just think it's completely naive. Just teach them soft skills, and that's, put them on team building days and, doing that sort of stuff. It just makes such a huge difference.
Absolutely, my friend. And like I said, there's amazing stuff that's going on in the workplace. And again, obviously there's still loads to be done within that side of it. And again, obviously in the educational side, but hopefully, with talks like this and the amazing work that, people are doing around the globe are starting to make a bit of a shift in a difference in that. And, I want to thank you massively. We're coming up to time now, Kieren, and I want to say, I know how busy you are, my friend, and I just want to say a massive thank you for coming onto the stories. It's been absolutely brilliant. I could talk to you for hours and hours. We do. But Kieren, if anyone wants to kind of get hold of you, how can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, that's kind of you. Thanks. And I love talking to you as well. We're good mates, and this is a topic we're both passionate about. So it would be days, not hours, I reckon. Yeah, so the easiest place to find me is on LinkedIn. So as long as you spell my name properly, you'll find me. But yeah.
You know what? I struggle with that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like this. Try to put your name in, but
I think if you can make a good hash of the first part, you'll probably find me. So that's where anyone would find me.
Fantastic. And Kieren, I want to say a massive thank you for coming on to the stories. And again, I really appreciate your time, and I will see you very soon. Cheers.
You are more than welcome. Lovely to see you.
Thank you. So guys, that was Kieren. As you can tell, what an incredible chap. He's doing phenomenal work in the coaching sector. So if you do want kind of touch base with him, then please do. Like I said, incredible chap. Thank you as always for all of your comments. Kieren and myself, I'm sure, I forgot to ask Kieren his permission, but I'm sure he wouldn't mind answering any questions that you have, with regards to the questions you put in there. Any links that you want to share for any articles that will kind of help raise more awareness around ADHD, then please do put these in the comments. We will be back next Friday with another incredible guest to share more stories around neurodiversity. And guys, if you would like to be on Neurodiversity Stories, then please do get in touch. We are looking for more and more people to spread more and more awareness. So thank you as always, guys, for tuning in, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Cheers. Bye-bye.